excited to hear his performance. Thank you.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
It is just fantastic to see you all here. I'm speechless almost, and I hope I can find all the words I'm supposed to find this afternoon. Before I begin, I would like to say thank you very much to the Morrisville Historical Society and River Arts for sponsoring the show, and especially to Jill and Etienne for their hard work this afternoon, which came at a moment's notice. Also to all the folks who have been involved in every part of this project since the beginning, and there are way too many of you to list. I trust you know who you are, but I would like to single out a few people out. Bo Wright was very helpful in lending an ear. Francine with some of the clothes. Oh yes, and of course, the most important are all of you who shared your stories so generously with me and allowed me this eye into our little state. And, oh yeah, last thing. The second act is performed in the spirit of Crazy Chase, not in his actual words or clothing. So, let's see. This story comes right out of this wonderful region of the world that we call home. In fact, it comes right out of down the street, about a block and a half. It comes from a time when Vermont was bigger, smaller, and the same size it is today. It was bigger because it took you all day to go from one end of the state to the other. If you're going north-south, well, the roads weren't quite as good back then, the cars were slower, so it took you all day. If you were going east and west, the mountains got in your way, so it took you all day. It was smaller because nobody ever went that far. Folks pretty much stuck to their homes and their neighborhoods, and they didn't venture out, maybe went to a neighboring town, but that's about it. It was the same size because, well, as you know, it was the same size it is right now. It was a time of kitchen tumps and barn dances, when neighbors knew each other's names, first and last, and often the names of their parents as well, first and last. It was a time when a person's world was the village. And many of these villages were home to a character or two. We're here today to celebrate one of Vermont's legendary characters, Alfred Crazy Chase, born in Middlesex in 1887, died in Morrisville in 1960. He was born in the backwoods of Middlesex, which means that his birth record, I believe, lists that they don't know his mother. I'm not sure where she is. His father was Ellsworth Chase. His stepmother was Nellie, a woman who was famous for being 100 pounds and being able to drive a set of oxen better than any man. That's the person we're talking about. I first learned about Crazy when I played music at the Craftsbury Community Care Home back in 2004, I believe, on St. Patrick's Day. And I played a set of jigs. It probably sounded something like this. set of jigs when one of the residents leaned over in her wheelchair from the corner and she said, "Where'd you say you were from? Morrisville?" And I said, "Yeah, that's right, Morrisville." And she said, "You must know Crazy Chase." And I said, "Crazy Chase? No, I don't think so. Why?" And she said, "He's only the best fiddler around these parts, plays all the kitchen tunks and barn dances. I should think you'd know him." The woman next to her said, "Marge, that was 50 years ago." Well, I thought to myself, Crazy Chase, yeah, I know I've been playing alongside a lot of the fiddlers around these parts. I played along Barb Motorboat McAllister and played alongside Fred King of the Double Stops, and you know, over the years I got to know quite a few of the fiddlers in these parts, but I had never heard of Crazy Chase, and I thought that was kind of unusual, and I said, "Well, anybody else ever hear of this fella?" And somebody volunteered. Oh yeah, we heard of him." And I said, "Well, what can you tell me about him?" And they said, "Oh, he could play anything." And I said, "You mean any instrument?" And they said, "Oh no, well that too, but no, anything on the violin. He can play anything on the fiddle." And I said, well, maybe I know him by his real name. Do you know what his real name was?" And somebody said, "It was Albert." Another person said, "No, it wasn't, it was Henry." Another person said, "It wasn't Henry, it was Josie." And then somebody said, "That was just the name he went by." Should have picked that up. And then somebody else said, "I think it was," and I forget what they said. And then the woman who started it all, she said, "We all just called him Crazy." Well, I left there. That day, of course, I finished up my little concert for them, and I drove away, and I knew I was playing down up the hill at Copley Manor later in the afternoon for St. Patrick's Day as well. And so I thought to myself, well, I gotta find out more about this Crazy Chase fellow. This guy sounds kind of interesting. Oh, wait a minute, I gotta go back, just step one back. Step back with me once. Back in the Craftsbury Community Care Home, and I forgot to say it's a very important part. I said, well, if we don't know his name, and everybody called him Crazy, maybe you could tell me why they called him Crazy. And there was silence. There was silence, but I swear half the people broke into a smile. I'm positive of that. And I just watched them start to smile and waited, and they said, "So nobody remembers why they called him Crazy?" You could tell they were a little reluctant to tell me about this. But finally one spoke up and said, "Well, I suppose it was because he wore women's clothes." He said, I think it was probably because he wore women's clothes." And I said, whoa, well, you have to remember, folks, now I had never heard of Crazy at this time. Never had I heard of Crazy. So I'm talking to people who are telling me for the first time about it. I drove away, and of course I was starting to think about Crazy quite a lot and thinking to myself, well, when I get up to Copley Manor, I'm going to find out from those folks up there if they remember anything about Crazy. Because after all, if he was from Morrisville, chances are there'll be more people up there that remember him. So I played my set of jigs, and I got through, and I said to the folks there, "Does anybody here remember a Crazy Chase? I heard about a Crazy Chase today, and I'm trying to find out, well, what I can learn about him." And I didn't tell them that I learned anything yet. And they all started to kind of smile. Laugh. And there's a lot more of them, you know, there. And they started to smile and laugh, and I said, "So you obviously do remember him. What can you tell me about him?" And one person said, "Oh, he could play anything. He could play anything at all. He could play it above his head, behind his back, down below his legs, and you only had to hear it one time." And I said, "Really?" And he said, "Oh yeah." And I said, "Are you sure of that?" And he said, "Well, as sure as I can be." That means as sure as you can be. Well, so I said, "Well, do you know why they called him Crazy?" And somebody said, probably because he wore dresses. And this time I was prepared, though, because I had already heard that he wore women's clothes. So I said, "Did he wear women's shoes?" And one person said, "Oh yeah, sure, with heels, yep, fairly heavy black ones. I guess they're called pumps or something, with heels on them." And another person said, and I said, "How about makeup?" And they said, "Oh yeah, makeup, he liked to put on lipstick and he would powder up sometimes, and he wore a wig." And another person said, "No, he didn't, he wore a hairnet." Another person said, "It was a wig and a hairnet." So I said, well, yeah, that was it. I left that day. "Oh, I know." And I said, "Well, anything else you can tell me about him?" "Oh, he liked to smoke." I say, oh, really? Wore dresses and he liked to smoke too? Cigars especially, they said. I said, really? Cigars? All the time. He'd be smoking 2 or 3 sometimes at a time. Wow. Right, well, I left that day and I'm thinking to myself, now I'm getting pretty excited. I'm starting to think, well, I mean, this is amazing. This fella who's well, of course I was interested in the way he dressed, because that's kind of unusual, especially back then. But I was even more interested in this idea that you could hear something once and play it directly afterward. How many people here have heard that story? They know they heard that Crazy could play something once and play it, or have direct experience of it? Besides from me, there's a few hands up here. Great. I heard this from more than a couple of people, and I heard it more than one time. And I thought to myself, well, how am I ever gonna prove that? How will I know if Crazy had that kind of talent? Now, folks, if you're a musician, musicians aspire all their training to become the kind of musician who can hear something once and play it, to be able to have total recall of all the notes and the sequence that they come in and the rhythms that they come in, and to be able to transfer it instantly to your fingers is not just a talent. It's well, I don't know, maybe it's just a talent. It's maybe a genius. It takes either a tremendous amount of training or a special circuit in your brain. I'm not sure which. But I was interested in that, and I just thought, wow, how will I ever prove it? Until I heard these 2 stories. One came from Tony Washburn, who many of you know is one of Vermont's most respected bluegrass fiddlers. And Tony told me that Crazy could get in your car and you'd be driving down the road, and he'd listen to the hum of the tires on the road. He'd close his eyes and he'd say, B flat, you're going 33 miles an hour. And you need an oil change. Gloria Green, whose father owned Leonard Geary, somebody might be able to help me confirm that later on, because some of these stories I collected, but anyway, whose father owned the jewelry store in town back in the 30s and 40s, told me that back in that time, you would go to the jewelry store to buy your records. And when you got there, you were allowed to listen to the record before you bought it, because they didn't have, everybody didn't have radio and they didn't have great reception and stuff. So the jewelry store would play the record for you to make sure it was the one you wanted. And on a couple of occasions, Crazy would come in and he would listen to the record once, and then he would walk out of the store and leave the record right behind. And twice, girls who were behind the counter chased him out. They were probably new to Crazy or something, and they chased him out and they said, Mr. Chase, you forgot your record. And he just walked away and said, Doc, I got it. Undoubtedly, you would hear it that next weekend, at whatever dance he was playing. Well, this unusual skill, this unusual ability to probably have perfect pitch, I guess we could assume, and had instant recall for all intervals and all the stuff of music, especially melodic, served him not only as a great fiddler, but in his capacity as a piano tuner. And as a piano tuner, that's how Crazy, I guess, earned his keep. That's where he made his bread and butter. There are countless stories of Crazy tuning pianos for folks and spending some time in their home. Anna Mae Daly writes in the Middlesex Historical Account, he would come and tune our piano and it would take all day. Mother would have to feed him dinner and supper. I heard at least 3 other accounts of Crazy's staying with folks and tuning their pianos. I know he stayed with the Thurstons in Waterbury. I know he stayed with, I can't remember their names now. The Demerits up towards Wolcott Craftsbury area. I know that because of this. So he would stay in many places. He would go for the afternoon. He would tune the piano. He would accept whatever libations and tobacco came his way. And if he could manage it, he would turn it into a week's stay, room and board.
Four old messages. This is Everett Demerit, 888-461-17. Crazy Trees told me in 48.
Everett, are you here? You are?
Yeah.
You want to tell them yourself? Well, do you? I'll play it. Never
His
mind.
name was Alfred. He came here to fill the piano, he stayed a week. He said it was a good place to study. He went to Burlington with us in the Jeep, down the Gordon service to have it serviced. And of course, he wore women's clothes, he smoked cigars. And we started up the street, we took up the Sears store. The women in the garage, and the men in the garage said to Dad, who's that woman smoking cigars? And there was a little shop there across the driveway. There's one boy off the outside the door. He'd go out in that shop, smokes a cigar, he'd have a cigar, all red, half a length of it, and make more smoke than before he made. And I think he died in the mid-60s.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Where is it? Where is it? Thought he said he was here.
No, he's not.
Oh, he's not. Sorry, sir. Excuse me. As you said, yes, me. Well, thanks to Everett very much. I don't know if you heard that last part, but he talks about the forge being across from his house, and there was a board loose, and his mother used to send Crazy out there to smoke his cigars, and he would get that cigar so hot you couldn't tell if it was the forge burning or Crazy. So he, though the piano parlor was probably where he, like I say, he made his bread and butter, I think where he got his soul's sustenance, though, however, was on the dance floor. From Stowe to Lowell, from Worcester to Wolcott, and I'm sure points beyond in every direction. Crazy played dance halls, played in the barns, played at kitchen tongues, played the soirees, the kitchen junkets, you name it, and there's accounts of him playing there. This gentleman right here was just telling me that there's a piano right here. There's a xylophone right here. I forget the guy who played the sax over here, but he played the sax, and Crazy stood right over there in this corner. I wish I had the whole band with me. You'll have to imagine that tonight. Stub Russell of Wolcott told me that people came just to see him play. They didn't come to dance. They came just to see him play. Oh yeah. This account comes from the Middlesex history. I think it's good. But it was dancing that attracted the largest and most loyal crowds. The Baptists, however, were notably absent since their religion forbade them not to engage in such provocative behavior. The dance band, also known as Bousquet's Orchestra, included Joseph Bousquet, his wife Helen Smalley Bousquet, a man named Brooks, that's Walter Brooks from Moortown, who played drums, and Alfred Crazy Chase, who played fiddle. Despite considerable competition, Crazy Chase remains to date Middlesex's most colorful character. And perhaps our own. And this from Bill Schubart. Oh, and I forgot to say thank you very much to Bill Schubart, Patty Wiley, and Sarah Seaman for letting me use some of their material. The piano began to play chords, and Champ began to set a rhythm with his bass drum and snare. Across the dance floor, Crazy Chase, still an object of intense curiosity to me, but no longer fear, mounted the platform with a violin case and his purse. He set down the purse, opened the beat-up black case, and took out a fiddle, which he tuned in about 4 strokes of his horsehair bow, and launched into a town favorite, La Bistranga. The piano followed suit with pounding chords, and Champ sought, rather than set, the rhythm taken by Crazy Chase. The dance floor filled within a minute, and the dance was underway. When I talked to Vianney Furland, a man who lives down in Arizona now, I've been directed to his way. He used to play with piano for Crazy at some dances at a dance you'll hear more about later. And I asked him what else they did at the dances, and he said, nothing. He said, people didn't even take time out to eat. They just danced. Crazy was a fiddler, everybody knew. his favorite thing to do. He could play most anything and would take any chance to get us all to sway and swing, to get us all to dance. At the end of every day, when the work and the chores were done, you could hear his fiddle play to the setting sun. Crazy was a sight to see, rocking hips, tapping feet. He could play and step at once and never miss a beat. Hornpipe, waltz, polka, jig, anything he'd feel. But the tunes he loved to play the most, rocking out a reel. His fingers, they would fly so fast, soon he'd get the groove. We just couldn't stop ourselves, our bodies had to move. We would chug and skip and hop and slide across the floor. And when the music had to stop, we always wanted more and more and more. At the end of every day, when the work and the chores were done, you could hear his fiddle play to the setting sun. By now, as you might imagine, I was starting to get pretty excited about learning about Crazy, and I started asking everybody that I thought might know him. And one of the first places I started to ask folks was at the Northeast Fiddlers Association monthly meet. Now, the Northeast Fiddlers Association meets on the first Sunday of each month at a VFW hall or an American Legion hall, usually somewhere in the northern part of the state. And often right back there, or at least a couple times a year, right in the building behind us now. And if you've never been to one, you should definitely go. They start at 12 o'clock if you want to just, well, if you want to fiddle, you got to be there at 12 o'clock. But the real fiddling starts with everybody at 1 o'clock. The fiddlers play a waltz and a hoedown and then a tune of their choice. And they usually have a backup band right there for you. And there's somewhere in the vicinity of 30 to 50 fiddlers show up on these Sundays from all over. And there's maybe 4 times that many people in the audience. Everybody enjoys the hamburgers and the macaroni and cheese and the cupcakes. And at least I do. And lots of coffee, and if you're so inclined, a beer from the VFW hall. And they dance it all off to in 2-steps and waltzes that put us younger people to shame. So you ought to go and check it out. It's really good fiddling, and it's really actually quite a wonderful, wonderful scene. And more importantly, and why I mention it now, is that it's really a direct descendant of those kitchen tunks and barn dances and soirees that were much more popular years ago and part of our real social fabric. So I went up to the board of directors at the Northeast Fiddlers Association, and I said, can you guys tell me anything about Crazy Chase or who I might talk to? And they said, oh, yeah, go talk to Ray. So I said, oh, right away, they said. So I pointed out Ray, and I went up to Ray, and I said, hi, Ray, my name's Alan Church, and I'm trying to learn everything I can about Crazy Chase. And he looked at me and he said, oh, really? I haven't thought of him in years. I tell you, that man could play anything. I said, yeah, that's what I understand, with quite a sartorial flair. And he said, what? I said, I understand he had an unusual way of dressing. And Ray said, oh, you mean the woman's clothes? Wow, I guess you could say it was unusual. Well, it wasn't until right then, and I swear this is true, that was the first time right then, maybe it was because I was talking to another fiddler, I don't know, that it occurred to me, well, maybe this was just a shtick. Maybe this was just something Crazy did when he got on stage. So I said to Ray, so Ray, this just occurred to me. I hadn't thought about it until right now. But was this just something he did, like on a shtick that he did on stage, or like a vaudeville act? Did he wear women's clothes only when he was on stage? Ray looked at me and goes, no, sometimes he wore a suit, but you had to pay him more. I said, you mean he was really a transvestite? And Ray said, a what? And I said he was really a cross-dresser. And Ray said, oh, I wouldn't know about that. And I said, but he wore women's clothes all the time. And he said, well, yeah, unless you were paying him not to. There's more evidence of this, suggested by Ethel Ryan, writes in the Middlesex History. Says Crazy Champ had a camp up on Mary Price's land by the grain company, taken years later by the construction of the interstate. We used to go up to the camp to pick flowers, and his wash would be hanging out, all women's things. Dick Sargent, many of you know, told me that his mother was hopping mad during the war because Crazy could get nylons when nobody else could. I thought hopping was a pretty interesting way. I talked to Dick Adams, and Dick told me that Crazy, I asked him, well, what kind of clothes did he wear? And he said, well, it depended on the occasions. What Dick did. He'd seen him in blue chiffon. Seen him in some pretty flowery things, and pretty dressed up things. Most people remember him in darker clothes, and more drab and more conservative clothes. But from a few people I heard that wasn't always true. And I wondered, and I don't know about this is conjecture on my part, but I wondered if, when he was younger, if he tended to dress up a little more outrageously or not quite as conservatively. And then as he got older, he'd sort of let himself go, and and he wasn't as careful with his looks. Mr. Adams told me a couple of other things that Crazy was very careful with his appearance. I mean, very careful. And then later on, I heard from other people that sometimes he would just smooch the lipstick on, and this may be partly because of his drinking. I don't really know. But I did seem to get varying pictures of Crazy, and I thought maybe it's just like I said, that when he was younger, he did those things more. Marvin Randall told me Crazy was a great kidder. Just a great kidder. A smart man. Many people told me that he was smarter than people thought. And a great kidder. He told me about a time that he was standing with a friend, and the friend was Crazy went to light his pipe, or his cigar, and he was striking a match like this. And Marvin says his friend took the match out of the matchbook out of Crazy's hand, and he struck it on the top, and he said, Crazy, you light a match like this. And Crazy blew the match out, took the matchbook cover from the man, turned it upside down, and said, any damn fool can do that. Jerry Furland, whose brother Vianney I referred to earlier, came up and he was studying violin at the Northeast Heritage Music Camp up here at Johnson. That's held in June now, 2nd, third year running or something, and he came up last year and he called me especially. He's from Arizona. He called me especially up. He said, I understand you're researching Crazy Chase. And I said, yeah. And he said, I got to meet you. I said, okay. So we met down at the Bee's Knees, he and his wife and me. And he said, he's a man, gentleman of 69 years old. I said, so what do you know? He said, I started playing violin 3 years ago. And the reason I started playing violin at 66 after I retired was because when I was maybe 7 or 8 years old, I saw Crazy Chase play. And I can still remember it. I can remember it like it was yesterday. I can hear that violin. I can feel what it felt like when I was there listening to that violin. And I have wanted to get some piece of that all my life. All my life. And I finally got the time to do it. Now I'm learning how to play. And I said, so where'd you hear of it? And he said, well, my grandfather had a place up in Elmore. And he used to have kitchen tonks all the time. And I would come up every once, once a summer or so with my family to visit my uncle, and we'd go, of course, go over to Gramps and see him. And I can remember getting there one time, and he was having one of his kitchen dances, and he sent one of his men out to get Crazy, and the man said, where should I find him? And Gramps said, there's 2 bars in town, you figure it out. So, anyway, so Crazy comes, and he was all dressed up, of course, and me and my cousin, we would hide under the kitchen table. They would move the kitchen table aside to make room for the dancers, Oh, and I should mention that when I asked about kitchen tongues, the person told me that, oh sure, you'd get together in a kitchen and they'd have to push the table aside so there'd be enough room for a square, and the ladies would line the cake up with, the table up with cakes, not pies. Anyway, so at the Furlan's place, I guess in Elmore, they would have these kitchen tongues, and Jerry said he was hiding right under the kitchen table. Here he is, 7 or 8 years old with his cousin, and he's listening to this amazing fiddler, and he says, Crazy turned to him after his tune one time, and he looked right at me and my cousin. He gave us a big wink, and he squeezed his melon. And I can't get it out of my head. It's like there forever now. Alan Sawyer of Hyde Park told me a story about when, and this must have been 1929, I'm guessing, considering Alan's age. He said he was about 8 or 9 years old. Crazy would come and play at the 4th of July festivities over in Wilka. And he and his 2 buddies, he didn't remember their names, but he said there were 2 of them. He and his 2 buddies would chip in their nickels, and they would buy Crazy a cigar. And he said it was so much fun, and we did this for at least 3 or 4 years. We would look forward to it, he told me. Crazy would take that cigar, and much like you heard from Mr. Demerit, he would start to smoke that cigar, and he just smoke it so hard, the whole thing would get like red hot, and smoke would like just billow around him. He said he would completely disappear in the smoke. It just would go out, and then Crazy would just go, fall right out of the smoke. They laughed so hard, they thought it was the funniest thing they ever saw. And I can imagine that. I think it was Crazy kidding around, or at least I hope so. This is eerily reminiscent of an account from Paul Bigelow. We used to go to the general store in the village, and someone would buy him a 5-cent cigar. He would just puff and puff steadily on it. It would kill anybody else. I started to hear so many stories about Crazy smoking that it was really hard to think of which ones to tell. When I got here, one of the gentlemen said, oh, I remember Crazy. He used to, what did you say? Put 20 cigarettes in his mouth and light them all at once, right?
Right.
20 cigarettes in his mouth and light them all at once. Mike Green told me that he was working down at the Bijou. He was the guy who changed the reels of films in between the films. And one day, he's in there, and all of a sudden, this was back in the 50s, and all of a sudden, the volunteer fire department comes racing down the hill, and 3 or 4 men, they rush into the Bijou, and they say, Mike, where's the fire, where's the fire? Mike says, what? What fire? And he doesn't know anything about it, and they said, there's enough smoke coming out between the 2 buildings out there that both must be on fire. And Crazy, Mike said, I think the only thing burning out there is Crazy's cigar. Sure enough, that's what it was. It was Crazy smoking several cigars out in between the 2 buildings. George Morse of Worcester told me that he was at a dance in 1947. It was right after the war. And Crazy was playing the fiddle, and he was there with his friend Dick Howerson. And Dick had a brand new meerschaum pipe. Now, for the older generation knows this, but for you younger folks, you know, we don't all smoke so many pipes these days, but my father used to smoke a pipe too, and the way you smoke a pipe is you break it in, you smoke it and you let it cool, and you fill it up, you smoke a little more, and you let it cool, and you do it gradually, you don't do it all at once. But Dick saw Crazy kind of eyeing this brand new meerschaum, and he said, "Crazy, would you like to smoke a bowl in my pipe?" And Crazy said, "That'd be great." And so they filled the pipe up with tobacco for Crazy, and he smoked it, and then he took some more tobacco and he filled it up, and he smoked it some more, and then he took some more tobacco and he filled it up, and I checked with George, I said, "Is this how it happened?" Anyway, he filled it up, he said, "That pipe was getting red hot, Crazy could hardly hold on to it." And Dick was just sitting there going, and he, finally just burned the whole pipe right out. Dick said, "My God, that pipe cost me $3.50, but you know what, it was worth it." I think my favorite smoking story, though, comes from Carol Reed of Hyde Park. And he told me that he was with a gentleman one time and was right up at the band shell at the high school here. And his friend pulled out a Union tobacco tin. And tobacco used to come in round tins, I guess many of you know. And this guy pulled out a Union tobacco tin. He popped off the lid, and he started to fill his pipe. And Crazy was looking at the tin, and he said, "Crazy, can I fill your pipe for you?" And Crazy said, that'd be great." So he started to do that. And then he said, "You know what, Crazy? Forget it. Just take the whole tin. My pipe's filled, I'm all fine." Because people were always doing nice stuff with Crazy. "Just take the whole tin. Because I'm all fine, and I got plenty at home, so you just take that." He was like, "You mean it?" And he said, yeah. So Crazy supposedly takes a pipe out of his pocket. He pulls the bowl off the stem, and he tosses it aside, and he said, "I burned that out this morning." Then he took a nail out of his other pocket, and he drove a nail right into that tin. Then he took his stem, he pushed that right into the nail hole, and then he smoked the whole tin right there. No, really. It's crazy, I know. Well, I think we're starting to get a picture of a very unusual person and an unusual character. A person who brought the light to many, a person who was himself, herself. A person who loved what he did and did what he loved. And we're going to hear a lot more about him in the second act. I will say that the second act is shorter, so I hope you'll all stick around. It won't be so long. And I'm going to close this first portion of the show. With something from Lamoille Stories. That evening, Crazy Chase was transformed into a conductor. His fiddle bow became a baton that could bring the whole town to their feet and keep them moving. When he stopped, they stopped, and looked anxiously around for him to start again. His unusual dress lost its sway and seemed curiously his own. I lost my fear and eventually my curiosity about him and came to appreciate the music that was his gift to the town. Jack, the dark-suited mortgage forecloser, and Marcel, the failing Elmore farmer, still smelling of fresh manure and falling further and further behind in his payments. Ray, the Rexall drugstore owner, and his daughter shoplifting his cosmetics. Dora, the 16-year-old mother, and her seemingly shy uncle and unwanted lover. Corinne, with no visible means of support other than the coterie of brilliantine men that orbited her. Reverend Pease, the sober Methodist deacon, and his wife hiding cooking sherry about the parsonage. All danced to his music, noticing nothing except one another when the music was over. Take a little intermission.
myself and with Dad. I play on both with some friends, at parties or whatever, just around folks. Yeah, I'm keeping it up with it. I'm not really going and keep my head above water. I'm definitely enjoying it. Yeah, I'm hoping it's on my list of things to do when I'm done with school. There's a really good teacher in there. I'm going to take some lessons from him, and I'm just too busy right now to, spend any money on it because I don't get play. It's just silly. So, that's important. I don't play I tried to play the bass at one point, but yeah. Kind of like, it's like I learned to ski. I tried snowboarding one day, I fell on my face like 6 times. I said, I guess I don't do this. So I'm sticking with the bass now. But yeah, this is nice to be able to do it. I might not play for a couple of weeks, I'll play one for a week, but it's always there. Yeah, a lot of it, but A lot different. Yeah, I bet. Really easy to do though. Easy. Doesn't take very long. It makes you feel good. Yeah, no, that's like I'm going down to visit my parents in a couple days. I'm not sure they won't know the difference, but they'll be psyched to see what I'm sure. Yeah, that's cool. Always been super year. Yeah, they're in the big one. They both have dementia, and my brother got dementia. His house in North Carolina. But I'm going down this week. I was going to go today, but I got sick last night. And that made me, I will be glad to hear it. So yeah, I was here on Friday, but I messed up on the second half. I had the camera turned off, so I didn't get the first two songs. So I didn't get him running in. So that's the explanation for the rest of it. Okay, yeah, that's right. I don't want to give it. But I'm like, I got bits and pieces, you know, he showed me a thing here and there. He's been telling me about it for a decade, but I haven't heard him talk about it in like 4 years, 3 years. Right, yeah, he kind of like, I was smart rock, and then he kind of scaled back, and I saw the accomplishments, I was like, wow. But I'm going to make a copy for my parents, my mom is psyched. You know, she doesn't fully understand it. She knows how, and the music. Yeah. So they like Alan and my mom taught school. Oh, really? For a while, I think. Alan has stories about my mom. Are funny, and my mom is like, she's like sweet. She's so good. Yeah, like Alan has some funny stories he told me once about trying to get my mom to up there and yeah, of course my mom wouldn't, you know, never. I was like trying to tell Alan he wasn't loud. It is loud. Alan. It's easy. But yeah, so it's kind of sad. Actually, I think we're doing okay. It's good. It'll be better for a busy. It's hard to have a conversation. Beyond small talk. Say the same thing over and over. I don't like it. I kind of got used to that when I lived here. But now it's like I don't see them very often, so I'm like, I don't know. I'm going to drive down with my dog, so I might go straight. I'm one of the ways, way down, way back to Buffalo Coast. So I'm trying to get pieces. I'm not really going to rush that. I'm getting colder here. Yeah, that is how you see something. Yeah, I need a break in general. Yeah, I'm psyched. But yeah, and also, it could be weird down there, so it would be good if I broke it up. Rushing down there, middle down. Oh, Wilbur's gonna be mad all the way through New York City. Oh yeah, oh totally. It's gonna be insane. But how could I leave him? There's so much fun. That's awesome. It's perfect. And my dad was like, "You're gonna bring Wilbur?" And I'm like, it's like, "Bring Wilbur." I'm like, okay. Oh yeah, my dad loves I'm gonna go deaf. I know. I'm gonna go deaf. Track your progress, but that goes I have no stealth. Absolutely no stealth at all. What are you up to? Have you seen you around? Oh yeah, I went up back to Nice. I'm probably make a lot more money than probably. I don't know. I'll always be a farmer. I don't know. I kind of hit the wall. Just not really ever making any money. Supporting myself. Barely. Yeah. It's not. Maybe I also got sick of being really poor. The last 2 years, especially around the last one. Jobless. I think I'm getting sick. I used to be proud and stuff. None of that stuff. Yeah, we're just down there. I don't know. Everything's up here. Although I do care. So I guess I wasn't around for it. Yeah, identity is a thing.
They told me some folks around here, but I just can't even believe it. I think I know you. I can't believe it. Oh, this is wonderful. Wonderful. My name's Crazy Chase. Well, that's not my real name. I can't remember my real name. I've been dead for 50 years, and sadly, my memory isn't what it used to be. But you know, little by little, stuff has been coming back to me on account of Patty and Sarah and Alan. What wonderful people they are. They are the most wonderful folks. Now, Sarah and Patty, they're pretty smart. Now, that Alan fella, I don't know. I don't know if he knows what the heck he's doing, but he sure is persistent. I'll give him that. Anyway, they got to asking folks about me, and folks started talking. And the more they started talking, the more they started to remember. And the more they started to remember, of course, that kept them talking. And all that remembering and talking sort of brought me back somehow. So here I am, just like this, right now. It's beyond passing strange, I gotta tell you. But hey, I'm not complaining. I'm just so happy to be back here, mostly because I get to be with you, all of you. Oh, and also, because I get to do this. You'll have to excuse me, I've gotta get this out of my system. Not bad. Mademoiselle, voulez-vous danser? Love is strangle, Mademoiselle, voulez-vous danser? Love is strangle, si vous voulez. Mademoiselle, voulez-vous danser? Love is strangle, Mademoiselle, voulez-vous danser? Love is strangle, si vous voulez. Oui, monsieur, je viens danser. Love is strangle, oui, monsieur, je viens danser. Love is strangle, si vous voulez. Oui, monsieur, je viens danser. Love is strangle, oui, monsieur, je viens danser. Love is strangle, si vous voulez. Got it down at the church rummage sale. The way my ma used to do. You know, boys would wear their clothes out, but girls' clothes didn't usually need much mending. I think that's how I started wearing women's clothes. Not really sure, but I think that's how, at least how I got to explaining it to everyone. I know some of you are thinking that, well, Crazy never appeared in such fancy clothes.
Right, that's exactly what I said.
Today, I'm sure you'll agree, is a special occasion. And so I thought I would dress special. I've also lost a little weight, it's true. I'm eating better. What you've heard so far is true. All those stories, just the way Alan heard them, I think. What you're about to hear, I'm not so sure about. Either because I can't remember correctly, like I said, or I don't really care. I like a good story better than the truth if it serves my purpose. It doesn't matter, believe me, it'll be more fun listening to it if I don't tell you the truth all the time. But what was true was what Ray said about me charging more for playing music in men's clothes. That is true. I did. I charged him more. Men, other men, can wear pants if they want, but that's not for me. Yeah, I don't know what you do with these things. Kind of squat. Maybe I need a lower guitar. Let's see if that works. I won't say I'm sorry, I won't apologize. Some folks disapprove, I can see it in their eyes. They can disapprove, though I don't know what for. And I'll put on a suit and tie, but they will pay me more. They will pay me more, they will pay me more. I'll put on a suit and tie, but they will pay me more. Now I don't play for money, I really play for joy. And I'd be playing in my dooryard if I were not employed. And I'll take off my dress if you want a piece of me. But ask me to put on some pants, then I up my fee. Then I up my fee, then I up my fee. Ask me to put on some pants, then I up my fee. I'm not against decorum, that's all well and good, to know what to do and say, when and why we should. But some folks think they get to say how I should dress, and they will. I always let them have their day, then I up my bill. Then I up my bill, then I up my bill. I always let them have their day, then I up my bill. 'Cause it shouldn't really matter what I wear, or if I put on makeup, or how I fix my hair. We all have a little light inside, but no one gets to see it if we hide. No, no one gets to see it if we hide. Now, if you're wondering if they knew I charged them more, well, sometimes I would tell them it was on a need-to-know basis. If they were from out of town saying they were just up getting married or something, well, they didn't really need to know. But if they were locals and they just objected to my taste in clothes, well, then I would tell them certainly right out front, because wanting to keep everything above board, knowing that they might talk to other folks about it. Now, I know this is true. You can ask Wallace Coburn if you don't believe me. Oh, that's right, you can ask Wallace. Well, thankfully, Wallace told everything to the Vermont Historical Society, and I can read it to you, which is actually more fun reading about myself. He asked me if I cared what he wore when he played to my dances, and I said, no, I don't. Wear whatever you want to. And he wore woman's clothes. That I did. And he'd powder up and have a hairnet, like I did. Anyway, most Vermonters, just like Wallace, they were frugal and they were tolerant and such. Well, they didn't care either. They didn't seem to mind at all what I wore. They would be just the same way. What was I going to say? I have to think for a second. Oh, yeah. Vermonters being like Wallace, as I say, frugal and tolerant and such and all that good stuff, well, they'd save their money. But there was one particular patron in town who was a little more particular and a little bit better endowed. It was the 4th of July when I was asked to conduct the band for the 4th of July celebration in town. The usual conductor was going to be down to Barry with his family, and so the band came to me and they asked me if I would conduct. I was just tickled pink, folks, I gotta tell you. I just thought that would be the best thing. Now, every once in a while I had played with the band, but I never had a chance to actually conduct it. And I thought that would be so great to conduct the band. I asked them if they care what I wore, just like I always did. And George, the trumpet player, he said, "No, we don't care what you wear, we'll zip you up." And I said, well, that sounded like a lot of fun to me. I thought it would be a great time for me to, well, I was actually at the time wearing a nice little blue pleated number with frilly white lace around the neckline and the sleeves, just beautiful. I was really hoping to wear it with a nice red bow for the occasion. We'd been working on a set of tunes, too. Set of tunes, this was called Green Fields of America. Well, as I say, this particular patron heard about how the band had asked me to play for the 4th of July celebration, and she made it her business to see to it that I dressed the way she saw fit. The thing is, folks, it doesn't fit. Not me, anyway. Now, this might surprise you, but I didn't have any of those, oh, I don't know, what do you call them today, you know, a sexual identity crisis or anything like that that gender benders and gay people have today. I didn't have any of that. I was who I was. I did what I did. I did what felt good, what felt like me, with very little inhibition, I can assure you. And almost no sense of otherness. Almost none. Well, hell, I knew I was different, but I thought everybody's different. You just don't see it. So most people, they considered me sort of simple-minded because of this. And I guess, in a way, I was. I just did what felt right, what felt good, what pleased me. Nylons, feeling of silk, making up, putting on my makeup, brushing my hair and my wigs, stockings, of course, tobacco, bourbon, can't leave them out. But more than anything, I think what I felt good was just entertaining people. Just having a little fun and entertaining people. When I saw people feeling good, having a good time, that's when I felt my best. Who am I don't know. Could be that pants were just harder to sew. What's my name? Don't recall. Guess I'm crazy after all. How do I fit in? My hair's such a mess. It's hard for a guy who wears a dress. People laugh and then they turn away, till I take out my fiddle and play. Then they drop their fear and I feel a little grace. As the music reaches their ear, and a look of surprise, and even a smile, a look of surprise, and even a smile crosses their face. God, how long will this last? Hope the future never comes to pass. People think that I'm putting them on. What can I do? I love blue chiffon. Take off that dress, I'm saying, you'll go far. And by the way, you should stop smoking cigars. But I don't wanna, this is who I am. Just a little bit of woman in a lot of man. A little bit of woman in a lot of man. A little bit of woman in a lot of man. Then they drop their fear and I feel a little grace. As the music reaches their ear, and a look of surprise, and even a smile, a look of surprise, and even a smile, a look of surprise, and even a smile crosses their face, crosses their face. I was a fiddler. If there was a tune out there and I didn't know it, I don't know what it was. I knew them all and loved many. Bob Estranga, St. Anne's Reel, Mouth of the Toby, Joys of Quebec, you name it. Westphalia Waltz. I learned all the tunes I could learn from my father, then I learned all the tunes I could learn from my uncle, then I learned all the tunes I could learn from all the fiddlers I met, and then as you've heard, I learned all the tunes I could hear from any record. People say I got pretty good at it. Sure fun to do. After a while, I realized it wasn't just the music. It was the fiddle. You're all I want. You're all that's real. You're all I need. So I can feel. You never go. You always stay and play. Take my hands when I lose my way. I lose my way. The joy you bring, I can always hold. Songs you sing never, never get old. You're the love, the light,